Hello.
Hi, how are you?
Good, how are you?
I'm good, thank you. Just 1 second, I'm trying to get everyone on the Instagram live.
Sure.
Hi Liz, hi there.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you well.
It's just I can't see anyone. It's just black with a swirling circle.
Let me know if that changed because we can see you.
Hello. Hi.
Hi!
Hello.
Hi, lovely ladies. Liz, can you see us now?
Hi.
Oh, I think Liz dropped out.
You're done.
Going.
Hi.
Hi, how are you? You're just like in the car on the way back to
I
Lagos, right?
am. I totally forgot. I thought I'd gone by now, but I'm on the way to the airport. Hi,
Now I
Liz.
can see you. How are you? Where are you headed?
I'm going back to Abuja.
Oh,
Going back
okay.
home from London. Yeah.
Oh,
Nice.
wow.
Awesome. And hi, Natalie. Hi to
Hello.
California. You're in Long Beach right now?
I'm actually at home in Santa Ana, but yeah, California, Southern California. How are you guys doing?
Hi,
Good.
Natalie. Nice to meet you.
Good. Nice to meet you. Hey, thank you so much, lovely ladies, for joining this conversation. I think it's really, really cool to put together this like a little bit behind the scenes talk. And I love that we are literally all in super different places in the world because I think it's really refreshing to get different perspectives. And as you know, we are talking about textile waste today. So my first let's say, thought for starters is, what is textile waste anyways? Is that just something consumers throwing out? Are we talking returns from online shops? Are we talking secondhand clothes? So what is, in your perspective and your opinion, textile waste?
You
You
should
go.
go
Okay,
first.
I'll go. Should I go first? Okay, so for me, textile waste, because I actually am a designer and we manufacture the mind is the bit that we cut off.
Can you
So the
can you
cutting
still hear
table
us?
way.
You dropped out a little
Sorry?
bit. Can you still hear us?
Can you hear me now? Sorry, it's so
No, it's
crazy.
perfect. Actually, no, it's
We
perfect.
can hear you.
Okay, so because I'm actually a designer, we make clothes. So the first thing that comes to my mind is the cutting table waste. So for me, that's the main source of our textile waste. But it's also the end of line fabric that's waste because it, when they design the big fashion house, the factories don't need it, they get rid of
Bluetooth.
it.
Waiting for
I'm so
connection.
sorry. It's a little
Bluetooth
bit.
is connected. Sorry.
No problem. It's brilliant.
Sorry.
I love that.
And then I think that textile waste is also the secondhand clothes that just get dumped, in landfill or sent to us in Africa. So yeah, for me, big, um, those are the three big parts of textile waste to me. Yeah.
Okay. What about you, Liz? What's your immediate thoughts when I say textile waste?
Two things. So one is that waste is built into the business model of fast fashion. And I think, there's waste of 35% to 40% of clothing that's being produced will never even be sold to a consumer. So you have a massive amount of waste that's built into that business model. And then, of course, here in Accra, we're dealing with the secondhand clothing waste. So we're dealing with post-consumer waste. But I also, the other way that I think about it and the work that we're trying to do here is that waste is just waste when you waste it, which is a, phrase that has become very trite. But I think we need to realize that fast fashion has pushed the whole cycle of fashion, of course, accelerated it to extent that people can't take the time to A, eliminate waste from their process, and B, to recontextualize materials. Because the reality is that like, yes, fast fashion garments are low quality, and that's part of why we end up with a lot of waste here in Accra. But also, it's because waste is cultural. Like, something becomes waste because culturally it doesn't have relevance. But still, you can recontextualize that if there's time. But the issue is that fast fashion has created an industry where there is no time and there is no money for people to spend on rehabilitating things, and that's why it goes to waste. So for me, it's a much bigger issue than just, you know, a sort of material problem.
Super interesting. Absolutely brilliant thoughts on the whole process of the speediness and the fastness of the whole fast fashion business. Literally doesn't give time to rethink and reconstruct or like systems, right? And I think that's also very interesting in context with what you do, Natalie, because you basically, you make this insanely cool creations out of like let's say textile waste and like products, like actual textile products that are used for packaging and stuff like that. Is that correct? So you think about it in a slower way and how to repurpose it. So how did that happen? Like when did that happen in your surrounding, in your cultural context also, where you were like, hey, this is what California needs right now and this is how we can change it a little bit?
Well, I've always said that my partner and I, Crystal, we've always been in this industry. We've always been going to thrift stores, buying secondhand out of resourcefulness, necessity, and creativity when we're younger, as far back as elementary school. So came naturally for us. And so we're always out there picking. We were selling vintage clothing for a long time. And so at these flea markets, estate sales, thrift stores, there's just so much out there. I always say there's more than enough for everyone. That's why I don't believe in this competitiveness in the industry. But yeah, I think that you can make anything out of anything, and we try to use natural materials. So we think about the long term too. So garment or this rice sack may have been around for at least 50 years, or maybe around for over 100 years, and we hope that yeah, we think on smaller scale for sure, but I think everyone can do the part. And we keep all of our excess waste too, and we find ways to upcycle that. We use all of our scrap. Our seamstress will give us a big bag full of it.
Bluetooth. Waiting for connection. Bluetooth is
How is
connected.
that? How do you think it happened that this became such a buzzword right now? Because of course sustainability has trends, but I feel the very rightfully so conversation about textile waste and the whole like secondhand streams, for example, upcycling brand is very much like a discussion right now. What do you think was like sparking that in your experience?
I think that for sure over the pandemic, people were staying at home and they had this like, I don't know, desire to be more meaningful, whether it be them creating something, learning a skill themselves, or appreciating something that's made from a small business, and maybe thinking about the bigger picture long term. I think for sure it's like become more global movement. And before that, I mean, we've always been surrounded by people that have been kind of aware of it, being in the vintage clothing industry. Um, but now it's like, yeah, way bigger. And I think it had a lot to do with like sitting at home and having time to reevaluate what's been going on. And then, yeah, it was a trend. So people are jumping on it. And, yeah, good.
How is your like you listened, you quote, what is your feelings about that in the surrounding that you work? Because I know like in quote you're mostly in Lagos, right? Between Lagos and London, unless you're like states in Accra, Ghana. So how is that in the like global south or in the region where you work when it comes to textile waste?
I mean, for me, you know, as it's, you know, it's not a new conversation, so it's kind of hard to sort of think about why it's suddenly in people's faces. But I think, you know, I have to believe that to some extent people are realizing that there's just too much clothes, whether they're staring at their closet or they're seeing, you know, the impact of the secondhand clothing trade here in Accra, where literally, you know, there are millions of garments laying on the ocean floor, and it's to the point where the clothing is coming from two directions. The clothing is coming new from the sewer system into the ocean. And then the ocean has so much clothing on the bottom of the ocean floor that it's also coming up from the ocean. The ocean is literally spitting the clothing back out. We were at the beach the other day, and there was a man who's lived on the beach, you know, for a couple of decades now, and he was saying that he's gotten so tired of the clothing waste because it keeps washing up. It was washing into his house, and he was like, I would throw it back into the sea and the sea would bring it back to me. And he's like, I just want to throw it back and not have it come back. So he used the clothing waste and sand to build a wall around his house so that the clothing waste will no longer flood into his house. So, you know, for people here, it's in their faces, and it has been in their faces, and I'm grateful that the global north, you know, is kind of waking up to that. And I would just ask that people in the global north realize that their privilege is to forget. Like, people here don't have the privilege to forget that this is a problem, and we need to do whatever we have to do in the global north to remember the reality that there's too much clothing. And I think it doesn't have to be a scary thing, you know. I think it doesn't just have to be bad news. Like, it can be accepting that there's an abundance. So we can flip it on its head to be too much to now we have an abundance of clothes and we have enough. We don't need to produce any more clothes. And we just need to commit to upcycling and repairing and recirculating the things that already have. And that can transform into a whole new industry.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I sort of missed the beginning of the question, but I think I have an idea. I mean, for me, in Nigeria, and in most places in Africa, you know, we don't really have the large manufacturing. We have little tailor shops. But the thing about that is, so we have the little tailor shops, and we have parties and weddings and things every weekend. And so there's so much of this waste that is just generated. And most of the time it goes to landfill or it's incinerated. And so for me, I'd rather see it as an opportunity than a challenge. So it's an opportunity for us to innovate, to come up with something new that we can do with the fabric, that the waste that we're cutting off. And that's why I've sort of invented this new fabric that I call Dakala, which is really made out of waste. So it's just creating a whole new type of fabric which uses waste as the raw material. So it's like when we see heaps of clothing, you know, some people would be like, oh my God, look at all that stuff. But for me, it's like, oh my God, look at all this weaving material. You know, we can do something with it. And I think that because it's here anyway, we have to work our way through it, not by, like you said, it's not all bad news. Let's see it as an opportunity. And it's here. It's something, you know how times evolve. So this is where we have to evolve as well, to become waste warriors, like find ways to fight the waste, to use it for you know, to live, use the waste to live. That's the way I see it.
I think it's super brilliant to think that way, because being scared of something, no matter what that is, no matter if it's a sustainability problem or just plain life, I think never really helps. So seeing it as an opportunity is really great. And I mean, I saw, and I work with sustainability since a bunch of years now, and I see a lot of businesses actually built on this idea of recycling, upcycling, and just textile waste right now. And it's so smart. Like, how do you feel, like talking straight up business a little bit, how do you feel it helped your business to be in this direction, in this field, since it became such a buzzword? Do you see your brands like evolving? Liz, do you see like your profile being elevated because you're kind of a research expert also with it? Because I mean, it's an interesting, for me at least, it's an interesting factor, because we also work in a business. It's a beautiful thing, but it's a business thing also.
Who wants to go first?
Well, I think for us, we definitely benefited from the but beginning, get people to understand understand or jump on board with it or money to do so. And I think that's what a lot of our businesses are held back by, is being able to find a way to do that we could like actually fund ourselves independently. I think it'll get easier, and I think a lot of like the more conventional ways, like in the fashion district, I think they're going to have to accommodate kind of businesses. Um, but we are still figuring out as we go. But yeah, we're super fortunate that people now like want to be a part of it, because it wasn't necessarily on this level before.
Who wants to go next?
I can, yeah.
Yeah, we can hear you.
Who, me or Liz?
You can go.
You can go.
Okay,
Go first.
okay. Well, so I think the brand has got a lot more attention now because we are sustainable, and we sort of started it off really in Nigeria and most of Africa. I don't know, maybe most of Africa. And we were intentionally sustainable, but for me, you can use waste to build a business, and you can make money from it. You can also build communities, because what I'm doing is I'm working with a group of women from an internally displaced persons camp. They've been they had to leave their ancestral homes because of the insurgency in the north of our country. And so I started this program called Weaving Waste into Wealth, where I'm teaching the women to work with waste. So we're weaving all kinds of things from it. And so it's teaching them a skill, but it's also giving them a route to finance, a route to, it's a way to empower them. And there's a funny thing that happened. We used to collect waste from the tailors. They would just give them a sack and they give us all of their waste. But when they realized we're actually making things from it, they started to sell it. So it's sort of like a whole industry can be built around waste. So that's my experience with the whole sort of trying to be more mindful and work with reduce textile waste.
That's wonderful. That's really cool. Yeah, I mean, I think,
Cool.
we're a nonprofit, so we're not a for-profit company, so it's a little bit different for us. But certainly we have a lot more people that understand the problem and the sort of complexities of the secondhand clothing trade, which is very helpful. And we have an incredible community of, a lot of individuals who donate and help us fund a lot of our programs, whether that's the textile recycling or the work that we're doing with the KIA. And I absolutely think that's, because of increased awareness. But I think we need, we're still a little far off from reaching the people we really need to reach, which are, the big brands and the people ultimately making decisions about the overproduction. Because if, that doesn't change and there's this consistent overflow of goods and excess, then, not that our efforts won't mean anything, but they will continue to be a drop in the bucket. And I do think we still have a long way to go before we can reach them. I don't know what it will take, but we haven't done it yet.
Liz, I have a question for you, because you just mentioned the whole issue with secondhand donations to the global south and etc. And I think everyone on this call, because we're working with the field, are like awfully aware why that is and what's the setup for it, right? But can you try, for people who maybe do not know why this is actually such a big thing and what is actually happening, to give like secondhand clothing supply chains in a nutshell? What's the issue with it? That would be
I'll give very brief. Basically, people in the global north donate the old so they can buy the new. So they put into a system that they don't take out from. So there's too much clothing. It doesn't sell in the global north, and it gets exported. And typically before it's exported, it's sorted. So the higher value things stay in the global north, and the lower value things like single-use t-shirts, you know, marathon t-shirts, conference t-shirts, things like that end up here in Accra and in other places throughout the continent of Africa. And we work primarily with Continental Market, and which is just 10-minute walk from where I am right now. And Continental sees 15 million garments a week in a country of just 32 million people. So it's far too much clothing. Some of this will go to other countries in West Africa. And Continental, there's two very important ways to understand Continental. One is that it's very much a model of sustainability. It's the largest reuse and upcycling hub on the planet. And that a lot of the solutions that we need in the global north exists there. But still, even with all of the skills, it cannot absorb all of the excess. And so basically every week 40% leaves as waste, and this waste ends up in the environment. Accra doesn't have a single sanitary landfill for it to go to. So there's not even that as an option. So most of it ends up being burnt or in informal dump sites or on the beach. And so the impacts are pretty devastating. And then the other side of it is that this is pushing all of the market into debt. So what we found is that less than 20% of the average retailer will make a profit off of the average bale. And so that's a lot of why this continues, because retailers are in survival mode, as are many of the people who work in this market. And even though they have a lot of the solutions, they don't have the peace of mind to implement a lot of them because they're in debt and they're trying to sell their way out of debt. And so a lot of the work that we're doing, you know, is trying to tackle both the material waste, but then also the debt cycle, because we need to be able to accompany people out of debt so that they can lead this conversation and build a better secondhand economy.
Because in the end, what it is, in a way, it's plain up exploitation. Like you kind of, you dump your waste somewhere with no consideration that there is no such a thing. I think it's, I don't even know who said that famous thing about this quote, like there's no such a thing as a way, like it just doesn't magically disappear or something. It goes to a place, and if it's that much and that much in volume and capacity, it has an impact on the local economy. And it's just
it's decimated the local textile and fashion industry. And what people don't realize is that it stimulates fast fashion consumption, because people become familiar with the fast fashion brands, foreign fast fashion brands, through the secondhand clothing trade, and B, because you're teaching people that clothing is disposable. When you're dumping on them, you are tangibly telling them this is a disposable thing. This is like a paper cup. Treat it this way. And so you have young people here in Ghana who no longer really value clothing, which makes it impossible for young designers here to survive, but also means that people aren't shopping secondhand once they reach the middle class. They're buying foreign fast fashion, you know, ASOS, Boohoo, etc., and having it shipped here. And that's what a lot of people don't understand, is just the colonial dynamic between the global north and the global south is what will, you know, kill the secondhand clothing trade and what will kill any promise of circularity, because we can develop as much circularity as we want in the global north, but if we aren't doing it with reciprocity and in solidarity with people in the global south, then it's pretty fruitless.
One of the things that I find the most interesting or the most crazy to think about is the thing that you mentioned, what you teach people, you know, in terms of like, this is fast fashion, this has more value than certain other things or certain clothing items. How is that for you, Nkwo and Natalie? Because from my experience, when I work with brands, with small designers especially, I hear a lot of them in those kind of regions in the global south saying stuff like, well, but people don't understand why my artisanal, handmade, handwoven, etc. dress is worth this and this money when they can get like an H&M, a Zara, something for a quarter of the price that has so much more status to them. So for them, it's really hard to close that gap and literally say like, hey, it's actually cool. Like our heritage skills that we have in this region, weaving, etc. is actually cool. Do you... you in Nigeria, but also like in California, selling that then to people, like something that is made out of used textiles, do you still feel a pushback? Do you have a certain kind of target group, or how does that work for you?
Well, in Nigeria right now, we're going through a sort of what should I call it? Like we've turned inwards. We're looking inwards, and then people just love everything and anything that's made in Nigeria. So
but also you have the
initially,
coolest fashion week ever, just to say. I'm such a fan
oh,
of your fashion week.
Lagos Fashion Week.
It's like I give a fuck about fashion weeks, to be honest, but the Lagos one is just so damn nice.
Yeah, it is pretty cool. There's so much really interesting, like just divines. I don't know. There's something in Nigeria at the moment that's happening, and all of us, our minds are all open. People are ready to receive new things. So we don't actually have. I mean, the problem we have with the secondhand clothing is that it has decimated the textile industry, but our textile industry also went through some problems with the World Trade Organization, but that's a whole other story. So right now, people love everything that comes out from Nigeria, and we're starting to understand that there is a problem with this overproduction and overconsumption. So more people are now using, we're sort of just we don't make large quantities of inventory, we just make small things, just enough for people to use. A lot of designers are now using secondhand clothes, going to secondhand markets. It's cool now. So the movement is growing bigger and bigger. So there's not really so much of a pushback. And we don't even have places like ASOS. We don't have high street shops. So whatever we need to wear, whatever we can find to buy has to come from the local designers mostly. So it's actually helping us to produce things, to be more innovative, and yeah, so it's not really a problem as such.
I
Or
love
I
that.
should say, or maybe I should say, it's not that it's not a problem. If you think about the heaps of it that are unused, but people are willing to accept and to embrace secondhand clothing.
Really cool. How's that for you, Natalie? With like making people understand why your garment have a certain price, even though they are made from like used textiles and stuff.
I think it has a lot to do with keeping everything local. We, up until recently, only had a local seamstress in Long Beach, and her team did excellent work. And, we consider them, we would consider the third, because it costs a lot of money to make this happen, especially when cutting on the yard. It's just piecemeal, and their tailoring is like on a couture level. So I think a lot of people, our customer base does understand that it's an investment, but we also want to make things that are wearable. So something that you could, it might be a high price, but you could wear it during the day, at night, and hopefully your whole life. So I think most people understand it, but um, there's definitely a bigger picture and more people around the world that just like on 5 things rather than just one, but those 5 things end up at a thrift store in 6 months. So yeah, it's not everyone, but at least the people who follow us understand it.
I think one of the things that I find really interesting and sparking is that when you ladies talk about your work and your perspectives on that, at least once you all mentioned the idea of local and community and who you work with. So how important, and that would actually be my last kind of question, how important do you find it for your work on a personal level, but also maybe for the bigger picture of things, to get people in that you work with, to educate, to build a platform, to empower people also, as you said, like the weaving wealth, I think it was called, to give chances out of your knowledge. Is that something you are very aware of, or is that happening by accident? How does it work for you?
Well, for me, it's not happening by accident. I'm doing it very intentionally because I have this thing in my head that I call working in circles, right? So I feel that if you take care of everybody in your little circle, they will take care of everyone in their little circle, and eventually all circles join together. I mean, ideally, that's very idealistic, but that's where what I feel, and so I try as much as possible to involve, um, like everyone who works with me is like we're all like family, and so one person looks after the other, and I'm just trying to make the community a happier, um, more a fairer, more inclusive space for everyone to be in.
Yeah, that really resonates with me. I mean, I think our team, we often talk about, sort of staring at the mountains of textile waste at the dump sites and just how overwhelming it can be, and how, we might not be able to make the impact we want to make on the whole industry, but that's why all the more reason to just be nice to one another, to show generosity, to display trust, to build real deep relationships. And I think too, having a relationship with a community, a committed relationship with a community, is the only way that you can truly understand the nuances of something, and it's how you naturally evolve together. So it doesn't become just something one-off or something that's a trend, but something that's truly understood and lived with everyone who's involved.
Yeah, I totally agree too. Our Long Beach community is so special, and without them, we wouldn't be here at all. So we have always thought to keep it local, just happen naturally, but also, we want to support young designers and collaborate more and more that may need the opportunity. And I don't think it needs to be like outsourced at all. And it's really cool to put Long Beach on the map, give these opportunities to other people. Yeah, I think community is everything for a business, and it brings meaning and value.
I love that. Thinking about that, working in circles and community is everything. I think that's a perfect end for the talk. Thank you so much, ladies, for joining.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Have
you.
safe travels back to Lagos.
All right, thank
Enjoy
you.
Agra, enjoy California, and I hope to be able to
Thank
meet you all soon.
Bye.
Thank you so
Bye.
much.
You're
Bye.
welcome. Bye.
you.